Well, 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 nice and bright and early today, my friends. It is Monday, and it is I. No, it is you. It is you and I who are here today to look at some fucking boring cryptocurrency charts. No, we're actually going to be talking a lot about traditional markets and Forex today, as there's plenty to talk about there as we got those markets trading back, and there's actually some very interesting prospects there. As far as Bitcoin goes, we actually did test into both the short-term time frame range and on the bottom and the top side, of which we spoke about yesterday. So I want to follow up on that today because there actually is a few things that are of interest there right now. And other than that, I'd like to wish you the best of the best and the happiest of the happiest. It's a new start to a new week. So hopefully that is in some way a good thing for people out there. And let's go check out the Krown trading application over here, which can be found at app.krowntrader.net. And what do we see? We see the exact same fucking thing as the last month. Wow. Anyways, I don't really have anything to add here that hasn't already been said. The only thing that is slightly different is the Bitcoin dominance hanging around 62%, which is let me just make sure that my other screen is going well over here. I think we're good to go. Okay, cool. Yes, indeed we are. Yes, the Bitcoin dominance just hanging around 62%, which is a little bit lower than what we've seen. Short-term move outside of the range that we've been looking at. But realistically, I do believe that if we are going to give alts a legitimate look, we need to go through them one by one because some actually do look quite good, some do not, and I think that we're probably seeing bifurcation in the market. Anyways, other than that, there's quite literally nothing to add, as these numbers are pretty much the same as we've been seeing for the last not just month but 2 months now. So let's get into the actual charts here. Let's start it off with the good old euro dollar. We've been following this one last week. We got the closure that we were looking for, and overall that is setting the bias for myself, at least, that I'd be looking for much higher here, probably a run towards 115.5 medium term, and a long term a run up here towards this last prior high alongside the weekly 377 exponential moving average. I do believe it's going to be initiated, which, for the short term, does that mean that we can have another test back down to the 200 simple and 200 exponential moving average? Yes, I do think that that's possible. That's currently about 1 cent below where we are right now at 113.5, but I do believe that that would be a nice opportunity, and overall the direction here is higher, especially on the higher term time frames, which I think are just a lot more obvious on Forex, which probably does spill on over into Dixie, which we can maybe check out later. But the next sort of trigger that I'll be looking for a move here is just taking out the March high at just under 115 actually, and then that would very likely spurn off a move back towards that 117 area that we just spoke about. So overall, higher term timeframes are very much bullish. Even the daily is bullish obviously as well. This is an uptrend, and we have a nice little, what do you want to call this? Do you want to call this cup and handle? You can call it a cup and handle. Do you want to call it a reaccumulation formation? Do you want to call it some sort of a flag formation? I don't care what you call it. The implications is the same, and there's really no reason, in my opinion, at all whatsoever to be bearish on this thing, especially as long as dailies are closing above 113.8. And Golden Cross lifting it up and guiding its little green dildos to the heavens, perhaps. Well, maybe not the heavens. I mean, overall, remember that long term, this chart leaves a lot to be desired, but very long term, if we're looking over the last 20-30 years, definitely does leave quite a bit to be desired. But for now, up is the path of least resistance, it looks like to me. And let's see how that kind of relates to the rest of the world markets here as we check out Nasdaq Futures, which we got the closure that allowed a big opportunity coming into this week, and it is very much present, and I do believe that it's very likely we'll see 10,100-ish region tested either this week or next week, whatever it ends up being. But the trigger that I look for on that move is just simply taking out the low side of last week, which is 10,350 and 3/4 if you want to be super exact, and that would initiate bearish divergence, regular bearish divergence between this point, and this point. So actually 3 drives, technically speaking, between this, and this on massively new higher highs. So at the very least, I'd be looking for a test down to about 10,100-ish region. If and when that does get confirmed, and potential to extend that all the way down to about 9,500-ish region. I do think that we could be looking at a major pivot in the market right now. Momentum oscillators will be turning down at the same time. Not a death sense in and of itself. Actually, that's a rather bullish thing when you look at the weekly or just any higher time frame stoke like that. That's suggestive that we are trending rather hard. But for right now, it is of interest just because the trigger for that trade is rather close, and it likely has massive implications expectations. Remember, this week is a week of earnings for all of the big market leaders. We're talking about Microsoft. We're talking about, I think maybe all the FANGs actually have earnings this week. I think on Wednesday, I believe. So keep an eye out on that, because typically what's going to happen, for the strong stocks, they're going to rally into their earnings. But that is all, expectations and whatnot. Hey, motherfucker, what did I just do? Well, actually, we do need to look at the good old, no, not Nifty, but Nikkei. Yeah, I want to look at Japan as well. But what was I speaking on? Yeah, earnings. So when it comes to earnings, strong stocks typically rally to their earnings. Weak stocks typically fall into their earnings. So we should expect, between now and Wednesday, I believe is when most of the earnings are. It might also be a little bit spread out between Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, actually. But I'd expect those stocks to, mostly go sideways, maybe test a little bit of upside as well. But coming into that actual earnings time is when, you can really start to match up a lot of the things that we're looking at right here. So again, at the end of the day, triggers are the most important thing for these sorts of things, but they're in place because of the closures of last week. And these are, weekly trades, which can have some pretty massive implications. Anyways, we'll obviously be documenting that as this week goes onwards and forwards. But for now, let's go check out Nikkei at 225. This is Japan's major Boris, and essentially it is still looking okay here. Obviously, there is a potential jewel sell signal in the works, but it would need to literally turn at most 2 days from now, probably tonight though. And if it doesn't, then this will just continue onwards and upwards, very, very likely. I mean, this is an ascending triangle right here. As long as it's running the 21 exponential moving average, there's really not a legitimate reason to be bearish upon it. It would be more so akin to the world markets, but sometimes we do see Japan lead, so I do like to check in on it. And it really wouldn't take too much out of the sales here to come back down and test around the 10 simple on the weekly at 22,225. So it does look to me like a lot of the world markets are kind of in unison, in concert with each other, if you want to make that analogy. And we should probably see the same thing on E-mini futures right here for SPY, and we do. And why is this interesting? Well, we're right at the precipice of a nice little breakout right here from this ascending triangle with any sort of a daily little closure above 329, and that would very likely initiate a move back up, fill this gap at 333 region, and realistically, this is a bullish setup here as well. We do have the golden cross going on. We do have higher highs and higher lows, and above all major moving averages as they all gain more and more divergence away from each other. So I do like that as well. So it's very interesting to see that SPY is actually presenting a little bit more of a bullish case versus Nasdaq potentially putting in a weekly top, which could we see rotations go on in the market? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's typically the way the market typically the way that markets goes. Typically, that's, for whatever reason, that doesn't sound right. Market goes or go. I don't know. I don't fucking know English. I've been speaking it for too long, and it doesn't even make sense anymore. Let's see. Is there anything obvious on our side? Do we see the same sort of potential divergence in place? It potentially is in place, but it wouldn't be. It would not be confirmed until we take out last week's low at 31.19. And then probably initiate a move back down to the low 305 region, wherever the 21 is where I'd be looking for. But for right now, this looks more or less like continuation than anything else. So we're gonna get a massive insight, I imagine, by the time that all the big names get their earnings in just a few days here. So keep an eye on that, because that very likely does run the market. And for now, it's probably gonna be more or less holding within this region as we just kind of waste time into those earning dates. So here's the thing with earnings, and I'm not going to go too deep into this right now because it's kind of outside of the scope of a video like this and it'll take way too fucking long. But the way that earnings work is not the way that a lot of people think that they work. A lot of people think that, oh, you post good earnings, good, you go up. You post bad earnings, bad, you go down. No, it's a lot more complicated than that, because there's a lot more to it than that. First and foremost, there's an expectation with regards to an individual stock earning, and the actual printed value versus the expectation is what is likely going to drive that first move in the after hours. Typically is when they get released. Sometimes pre-market, but mostly post-market, in my experience. And then what matters even more after that is they're going to give a forwards outlook, and they're going to have a conference call. You want to pay attention to that, because that's usually what's going to actually drive the next sort of major sentiment. And any sort of a negative vibe there can get played off pretty damn heftily. And this is a time for myself, who uses TA as my main source of edge. If I was trading traditional markets, which I'm not, but when I was, even as a market maker with all of the advantages of being a market maker, I would actually not trade the day, sometimes even 2 days before earnings, and I would certainly be lessening my positions about a week out before. And then the day after earnings are posted, that's usually when you can actually have some more obvious plays. But the day of, it's just your edge, if that is your edge, unless you're an insider yourself and you know what the fuck they're gonna say, it's just diminished in my opinion, at least in my experience. So that's what I'd say about that. But let's go through them now, because we do have again, all these major names in potential major weekly pivots. So Tesla, same thing, taking out last week's low 1431, and I'd be looking for moves down to 1200 very quickly, and even extension to 1100 or 1000 low, and then potentially bounce there. Apple, same thing, all the way down to 365 region. If we do take out last week's low, with possible extension to 350, good old 350. And Microsoft a little bit different looking here, but I don't think that would be asking for too much to get an extension down to 195. This one looks a lot more obviously toppy, has the same sort of bearish divergence in place as all these guys do, and these are some of the bigger market leaders right now. So keep an eye on them, because they're very likely going to drive the overall sentiment. Why does this matter to Bitcoin? Well, it kind of does, kind of doesn't, but more importantly, on the macro scale, if we do see traditional markets take a massive downturn, I'd expect Bitcoin to take a massive downturn outside of its current range and initiate all of the bottom side targets that we spoke about. By the same token, if all major markets reaccumulate here and just continue on the rally that never ends, then well, I'd probably be looking for Bitcoin to give another shot to the upside resistance at 9,900 on the higher term time frame. So let's actually go over to it right now. I suspect that this video might be a little bit on the shorter side today, just because there's really not too much new things to be speaking about on Bitcoin. But to follow up on CMEs, now that we got CMEs trading once again, there's a couple things of interest here. So first and foremost, if we're following the descending triangle that I marked out this, I think like last week or whatever it was, I would consider this another test to the top side resistance of it. And take that as you will. This is obviously not financial advice, and I'm not a financial advisor, but you can probably figure out what the fuck I'm doing, as there's a very easy and obvious risk management portion for this area, as long as we're kind of following these lower highs. Well, that is my main disposition on this. The volume signature works out properly, the shape is correct, and major movement averages are once again suggesting a little bit more of downside pressure as the death cross gets initiated on the 4 hour once again. Can we have a snake around and it gets faked out, just like we saw right here and right here, and maybe even again right here? Yeah, can definitely happen. But as long as we're below the 55, I would give it respect, especially seeing as the 4 hour 200 simple does have a negative slope as well, while we're in the context of a descending triangle, while all major markets are suggesting a little bit of frothiness, if you want to call it that. On top of that, we also do have hidden bearish divergence in play, very likely, although it's not confirmed just yet. If we confirm this as a local high, which would happen if we either take out the last 4 hour low, it's a little bit more of an aggressive way of doing it, or just close like an hourly or 2 hour below there, which is like 9,200 even, then I would consider this a local high, and then we'd have hidden bearish divergence between this point, and that'd very likely bring us another move down to the 90.50 base, same area that we spoke about yesterday. And sorry, I completely forgot to follow up on yesterday's short-term analysis for Bitcoin. We hit the bottom side target at 9,100 based off the low-term time frame, hidden bearish divergence, and then what happens after that? What does Bitcoin do? It comes back up and tests the top side of the range of the short-term time frame range. Classic fucking weekend shit. It's exactly what I was talking about, and I don't mean to do any tooting of the horn, but that is quite literally what we said. And that's usually what you're going to get on the weekends. You're not going to get you can get some big moves, but it usually comes back into like the regression of the prior week's price action, if you want to think of it like that. My point is we don't get reversals in the weekend. I would strongly suggest looking for a reversal that happened anytime post 2017 December when CMEs debuted. That was over the weekend. That was contrary to the week's direction. That is on a higher term time frame than a daily or higher. Which you won't be able to do because I've done it a million fucking times. Well, maybe you do. I don't know. Maybe. Anyways, let's go over to the 12 hour and see what's going on right here. 12 hour is looking like we're starting to diverge the 21 and 55. as that cross does start to strengthen a little bit, getting the bearish cross right here, testing it once right here, but the rejection did lead to a divergence between the two, which is suggesting that bots and algos are slowly but surely shifting onto the sell side of this. Now there is two sides of this though, of course, because we do see that 12-hour stocks very likely going to cross the upside from here, and I really don't like trading against those as they just seem to be the secret. And what do you know, where do we officially cross them back up to the upside? On a next 12-hour daily closure above 91.40. By the way, for CMEs, 12-hour closes in 4 hours and 43 minutes versus I think like 6 hours or 7 hours for spot price action. So you will get that clarity a little bit faster. Anyways, we don't see the same sort of divergence potential there. I'm curious how high of a time frame does it go up to where we could potentially get that. 6 hour has it between this point at 92.50 and where we are right now. 8 hour, no, not potential. So all the way up to 6 hour, not all that impressive. We are kind of making a mountain out of a molehill here, and I think that it also is worth focusing on the fact that all these time frames, Stokes are looking for a little bit of an upwards try, I believe. So let's go back to an hourly. Well, then again, hourly has lied to me. Hourly is turning down here, but that's going to be the most floaty, obviously. 2 hour is in the process, yes, and obviously we have some major hidden bearish divergence going all the way back up to this price point right here at 90, almost 9400-ish region. So it's something to be aware of as long as we're below there, especially. If we go to the 3 hour, 3 hour is still in the process of heading up, but will cross to the downside with any sort of a closure below 9200. That's very interesting because that would confirm this is a local high and very likely initiate that hidden bearish divergence back down to a little bit below 9100, it looks like. And then obviously we've already looked at the 4 hour, but the 4 hour, showing 9100 for momentum turning back onto the downside. So we'll keep an eye on that. Obviously, if we go to the weekly as well, we have our new weekly trading here. And what do you know? We have a nice range between the 10 simple and the 21 exponential moving average. Funnily enough, the 21 exponential moving average does seem to get our bottom side governors rather well. What the fuck was that? Oh, just some notifications on the computer. Anyways, what was I saying there? This is a little bit more, the downside from looking at a weekly right here is more difficult than looking at the upside, actually. If we take out, what is this, 6th of July week's high at, I think it was like 9,500 tick or just under that on spot, I would look for a move all the way back up to test around 9,900, actually. But the downside a little bit less obvious from a weekly perspective, so I don't really have too much to make off of that, but I should follow up on the weekly Stokes. They have obviously turned down quite a bit as well, and we do see that weekly RSI is really not giving me anything. Weekly Jewel, if anything, is, I mean, maybe putting in the bouncy bounce there, but I wouldn't trust it on a chart that is this new. I mean, only 2 to 3 years of data, almost 3 years of data is not enough to populate that. We don't even have the slow on that, or the super slow, I should say, on that as it is right now. All right, get rid of some of my alerts right there. Jesus Christ, how can I turn that off? That would be way better. Okay, let's go to spot right here and see what spot's doing. And weekly looks more or less the same. As you can see, we got our first closure below the 10 simple, whereas CME's got its first opening closure below the 10 simple on the weekly. It is starting to get a pretty massive down curl on it as well, and we do see the same sort of signatures on momentum oscillators, of which I do think that it's worth pointing out. This trend line right here and this trend line right here, both of these likely do matter. As you can see, this one coming in right around the, or what would very likely be right around the edge of the bullish control zone. So it would kind of suggest that we maybe do glide down in this region, but also would be looking for a bounce off that region as well. How much damage is done to price action before that happens? Well, that remains to be seen. And if that does fail, then I'd look for a pretty massive down, actually, from a weekly momentum perspective, all the way to the lower area right there, right around the bearish control zone, which, you can see those things work with each other over time. And if you actually really wanted to get like super autistic about it, you could make good, pretty damn good workable relationships between the two. I think that is also worth mentioning this as well. And this is something that, I guess is maybe not as useful to other people because it would be hard to verify yourself, but and I think that is always very important to verify yourself. I don't think that is good to, I mean, obviously it's not good to be a fucking follower, and it's just weird anyways. But looking at this right here, let me pull up a fresh chart. Yeah, here we go. If I were to make a trend line on my reverse Stochastic indicator cross, it actually gets things pretty damn well. We can go all the way back to our $20,000 Bitcoin high right here, and this has actually gotten the weekly momentum incredibly precisely on these major pivots. This is your $20,000 high right here. This is your $14,000 high right here. Retest at the $12,000 high, I believe it was, and then more recently we have tested into it once again. And is this going to work for forever? No, I don't expect it to, but we do actually have something of particular interest here, just because, well, if we were to make something out like this, it does add validity to the fact that Bitcoin is in one macro scale consolidation that's been going on for the last 3 years, ever since it hit $20,000 high. And that makes sense, intuitively, because obviously Bitcoin has not really come down and destroyed the cycle lows. It also obviously hasn't destroyed the cycle highs as well either. And that would suggest, and if we were to use some horizontals here, that resolution would be had to the upside on a macro scale above, well, pretty much our last weekly closing high at about 10,000, and into the downside, spelling massive doom for probably for a very long time, with any sort of a closure, especially below the 200 simple and 200 exponential average, which are in line with this area as well. So I do like the confluence there, and if you do want to get super artistic with it, just like me, then we could even look at this as one massive consolidation. Not perfect, but does get the job done, and depending upon which exchange that you use, you could probably actually make that fit. It's just the problem is that most exchanges, exchanges kind of like go in and out of favor. Finex was really popular back here. BitMEX was really popular over here. Bybit, Deribit, fucking Prime XBT, all these shitcoin exchanges really popular right here, and then we've been doing this. So fair enough. Let's go back down to a lower term time frame, like a 3-day. No, it's too long, man. 3-day Stochastic still actually floating down, technically speaking. We did get a new 3-day dildo last night at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Any sort of a closure above 91.40, and we will actually see them turn back up to the upside. That'll also be another good early warning signal that Bitcoin will likely try another move to the top side of this range at around 98 to 9900-ish region. 3-day historical volatility percentile is literally flatlined. Multiple 0 reads in a row. We have 1, 2, 3, and working on 4 right now. And there's never been, I don't believe that there's ever been a 4-day period of literal zeros, not even in November 2018. And obviously, you can always doctor this, or doctor the settings here so that it's going to show, something more interesting. And actually on the 3-day, you can see that, depending upon which exchange that you can look at, it's actually not even as bad here as well. Although still, you wouldn't be able to find another example as aggressive as what we're looking at right now. So realistically, again, suggesting that we are on pretty damn extreme levels right now, and that's using very high settings. I believe I'm using a 365 look back right now, which suggests that, we're taking in more data, which means that, this is even, an even greater perspective as far as the macro goes, that this is really, really very much an outlier as far as low volatility goes within the market, for Bitcoin particularly. Anyways, 2-day, going back to this one as well, I think that we got a new one. No. We close this one later tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Any sort of a closure above 91.80 and momentum will turn back up to the upside. Could you look at this as potentially trying to put in another set of lows right here? Yeah, could work. I mean, it's a slightly higher low than what we had back in late May, so I suppose that it would work. Could we get another wick down to the 55 at the same time and not break? Yeah, I think that that's very much possible as well. It's very likely going to be governed by the direction in traditional markets. Looking at 2-day momentum also, as though it is of note that 2-day Stokes have actually rejected right at the edge of the bearish control zone and turning back down. I do think that that is a lot more of a bearish look, and 2-day Jewel actually given a little bit of a hodl or short signal, which is mostly a follow-up of the daily from CMEs, which I think is a little bit more powerful if this one does play. We're still not getting the signature that you'd expect for looking for continuation. We really need to see this take an aggressive turn to the downside now in order for price action to follow through, which obviously at this point waiting for that is really not the best way to be doing it. Just looking at levels here is the most important thing. So I'll say the same thing that I pretty much say all the time, which is this. We can talk about all the cool little things going on in Bitcoin as far as indicators go, but at the end of the day, as long as we're above 9,000 and below 9,900, there's no real resolution to be had on the high term time frame range here. It's just more or less range behavior. And that's cool. And some people are probably having a good time trading this, but I would rather not. I'd rather not. Looking at daily RSI right here, do we see anything of note? Not really. I'd say it's neither bullish nor bearish, quite literally right below 50 read, if anything. Daily Stoke still headed down and will remain to the downs. Okay, so here's a little bit of an interesting thing as well. If we're following up from the last few days, you'll notice that Daily Stokes did reject from the bullish control zone and straight down afterwards. But here's what's more important to that point is the fact that we do see this still following the downtrend. So our last high was 94.50 right here on a daily. Since then, we've come back down, grazed the 9,000-ish region once again. And if we are going to be bearish on this, we'd very likely expect this to be our next lower high, actually, because that is in line not only with the topside resistance of this being a descending triangle on CMEs right here, as we denoted earlier, which is also in line with the CME 21 exponential average. But if we go back to the daily on spot, we'll also notice that. Oops, let me go to a fresh chart. Actually, we'll also notice that if I'm using this reverse Stoke indicator cross to kind of judge the resistances again, well, guess what? It actually does fit the bill right there as well. So here's the thing, when it comes down to trading and trading ideas, it's all about coming up with, probabilities and statistics and whatnot. And, at the end of the day, does this mean that it's destined to go down? No, but it does offer up a nice little piece of edge because most importantly, it offers up an area to be managing risk on, which would essentially just be the high of yesterday at almost 9,300 or this is Finex, so it's probably got a premium on it. 92.50 on regular spot for GDAX, Mexico, and Stamp. All those pretty much in line with each other. So I do like that area overall. That also means that if we do take out yesterday's high, very likely we will see another move back up to about 94.50, and at that point, anywhere above, of course, any 12-hour or daily closure above 94.50, or even just a wick above what we saw right here at just under 9,500, and I'd look for extension to 97 and probably realistically 9,900. And then we can talk about, fun stuff to the upside once again. But for right now, when we're obviously a lot more close to the downside resolution of this range, it's just more appropriate to be talking about the downside targets. But don't get me wrong, if Bitcoin does meet that criteria to the upside, I will be talking about 11,000 and 11 and beyond once again. But for right now, since seeing as it's a lot more close to the $9,000 and slowly rising support in line with the 236 fib, in line with this horizontal right here, in line with also the Cyan 89 exponential average on the daily, any sort of a closure below there on a 12-hour or daily or even a 4-hour dildo below 8,900, if I want to be super conservative here, I do think that would be appropriate, or at least that would be the lowest time frame that I'd be comfortable with using. Would initiate a measure move all the way down towards high 7,000s, in fact, which there would very likely be bounces along the way and potential a fake out reversal back up to the upside possible. There will be documentable ways of doing that or judging that at least, and that's what I like about that as a trade. But I'd really be looking for a bounce between 85.50 and 8,600 in this blue box, also kind of in line with the last low that we saw the first major low that we saw in early May. But realistically, do I think that things would bottom there? It's possible, but unlikely. I'd probably be looking for things to get sold into and realistically meet this measure move down here towards a 382. Also a nice historical horizontal area coming in from the last major breakouts and breakdowns from March and also May. And if that area fails, then I extend targets down to the mid 7,000s or maybe low 7,000s. But at that point, it's better to take things one at a time because we don't really want to get too ahead of ourselves right now. And when we're looking at this low of a volatility read, we really should be looking at a multi-$1,000 move. So it would be good to go into this more or less agnostic, because you don't need to catch the first wave in order to make a good trade, at least in my opinion. But of course, moon boys and doom boys out there, they need every fucking cent of it because they have invested 100% of their funds into whatever asset that they're trading or shorting or whatever the fuck it might be, and that's like your lottery ticket to riches, which is just a terrible mindset to be coming from, which is actually going to be one of the topics of my mindset channel. Anyways, I've been working on that one quite a bit and have several videos already ready, but I'll still hold off releasing it until September. Probably around my birthday, if anything. Alrighty, what else do we want to talk about? Already 30 minutes in. Let's go look at some shitcoins. How about Cardano? Yeah, I still think that Cardano is probably coming back down and testing around 1200 to 1250-ish region. But could this one turn bearish? You know what? If it does come below 1250, I do think that we could have our next major lower high in place, actually, because you will notice that below last week's low, which is actually 1300 about, then we will start to turn weekly Stokes back onto the downside, and that would come along the side of many things. We'd be seeing this turn down, obviously, which is bad enough, but not in death sense. This would be quite nasty, having major hidden bearish divergence between April high and July high. Now, obviously, this is like a year away from each other, so how much relevancy does it have? Well, not as much, but it'd be something that I'd be at the very least looking for to play all the way back down to maybe 1100, perhaps. Test around there and then come back and reanalyze it. Let's go check out Link. How's Link doing? Link still looks good. I don't have any major issues with Link. Link still seems to be the darling in the market. I was looking for a move down to 79,000 Satoshis late last week. I don't know if we're going to get that. If we do, that would very likely be an opportunity. Yeah, and I actually do think that it could still be possible, but I'm not bearish on this chart. This chart is not bearish as it is. It still need like another week or two of stalling out before it's an issue. And from a momentum oscillator perspective, I don't see any glaring issues here. Maybe some regular bearish divergence between this high and this high, but again, same issue there. That's more than a year away. I don't know how relevant that is, or at least how powerful it would be. I'd probably be looking for, if it does get a tick down to, high 70,000s, that'd probably be another opportunity. And I'd be looking for another try higher. The weekly still looks good, is what I'm trying to say. It still looks fine as far as trending assets go. Let's go check out Mr. Beaterall. How's Mr. Beaterall doing? 239 almost. Looks like it could pull through here as well. It did set in a higher low. It's not a chart worth hating. Let me go to a chart that has more history though for this one. Yeah, here we go. Oops, nope, that's $. That's not Ethereum. My bad. Where are you motherfucker? There you are. Oh, you're right above. Okay, cool. This one's difficult as well. Does it have that same trend line that we actually see on Bitcoin? Yeah, it actually does. But what's difficult about this one is the fact that we do have a golden cross. We also do have what looks like a short-term top here too. So how would I look at this one going forwards? The upside's actually more difficult here than the downside. The downside's a lot more easy because we could use last week's low. We can't really use last week's high as a continuation point because there's not really a continuation here. I mean, it's still in a downtrend as it is. It doesn't really break the downtrend until it gets back above 275 on a weekly basis. So that's what I'd be looking towards. It's going to have a chance? Yes. Is there other glaring issues in its face? Yes. But I suppose I would be cautiously bullish. I suppose I'd be cautiously bullish on this one as long as it's above last week's low at 228.5. Daily looks okay for now. Daily looks okay for now. What else you want to look at? Maybe some Litecoin. Some Litecoin action. 42.5 looks really shitty still. Looks like another descending triangle on a long period of time, with a resolution to the downside below 41.5 bucks. Resolution to the upside above about 44.75. But obviously, taking on a more bearish tilt on this one, seeing as it quite literally is in a descending triangle, and we do see all momentum oscillators presenting a more bearish case here as volatility contracts into oblivion. Looking at the 4-hour, probably going to follow whatever Bitcoin does, as most things. A lot of people have been asking about EOS just recently, and what do I have to say about this chart? Well, do we have anything to say about this chart? Alrighty, so what do we have here? We got another straight down motherfucking chart.
Oh,
Jesus Christ, I just don't understand. I would love to understand the obsession with straight down charts. And remember, this is not what the real chart looks like. This is what the real chart looks like, a dead heartbeat. Without comment. BNB is actually the only one that looks like it could pull through here. But again, if Bitcoin pulls through here to the upside, are all these alts going to go down, and take another leg down? Probably not. They're probably going to follow. If Bitcoin takes a leg down though, then they're probably going to get absolutely bouqueted. Anyways, looking at Mr. Ripple's nipples, same thing happens. This one actually, I'd put an alert right at last week's low. If that one gets taken out, I'd be looking for extension all the way down here, back into the 15.5 cent region. Ripple me nipple gangs is going to be loving the cheap ripples that they might be able to buy if that does happen. By the same token, to the upside, anywhere above this high right here at 22 cents, and it actually will very likely go on a nice little tear back up into the upper 20s. Overall, but again, what's the obsession with the chart that looks like? Really think about what a chart like this looks like. Like it's not just fucking pixie dust and fairy tales. Why a chart like this is just cancer on your eyes, but it's quite intuitive if you actually think about it. Think about this right here. You're going up, and then you just get this massive fucking green dildo party out of nowhere. What do you think's happening right there? Well, does this look like it's out of the ordinary? Yeah, fuck yeah, it's out of the ordinary. Look, for most of its history, it goes sideways and doesn't do fucking shit. It trades within, trades below like even a cent for most of its history, right? So, right after it does get up to a level like this, what happens after that? It immediately gets sold into. People do not want to hold this, and for years and years later, it is literally in a constant downtrend on all time frames that actually matter for long-term trend. So, what do you expect to happen to a trend that is very strong? Well, you expect it to continue until it doesn't. And believe me, these things can continue into oblivion. Is it going to go to zero? Probably not. I mean, I don't think that really anything ever truly goes to zero. Beanie Babies still get traded, but I mean, at least Beanie Babies are like physical objects. I don't know what you can do with like altcoins for the most part. Now, that's not to say that all altcoins are shit. It'd be very naive of me to say that every altcoin is just absolute garbage, but I can see from a charting perspective that well, this one looks pretty nice. That's a bad example, but look at like a Zcash, right? Look at like a fucking Zcash. Like what in the fuck is that? Tron Cash. Well, Tron Cash does really have enough history to like really dig into, and actually if something's gonna blast through here, Tron actually does look like it might. Neo again, gets up to $200 or whatever it was. Immediately sold off into. I mean, this is silliness. This is silliness. You're even there's a massive descending triangle being printed in front of your very eyes right here. In front of your very eyes. I mean, if we put this on log scale, it makes a little bit more sense, I guess. Fair enough. And same thing for most of the other ones. Stellar was another one that was actually looking pretty damn good, and I think that we almost hit. No, we didn't hit our 11.5 cent target. But I do think it's going to get a test up there. I don't know, man. Do we have bearish divergence on the daily yet? Not just yet. It's probably going to get another try at that 10.5 cent high, but after that, I don't know how much I would trust something like this, man. What about Monero? Monero also was one of the ones looking a little bit decent comparison. Yeah, and I'd still say so. Following a daily uptrend, so I do like that. Weekly can pull through here as well. If anything's going to have a chance, Monero probably as well. So there are going to be a few. The ones of note are the ones that we kind of, I don't know all of the ones I know because I don't spend my time looking at altcoins except for the ones that you see here. But for what it's worth, that's those ones do stand out, and you can make that decision for yourself, obviously. But I would say for myself, they have obviously different signatures than some of the more weaker coins in this market. Anyways, let's go check out my secondaries right here. Is there anything new to check out here? I mean, I'm like truly bored when I look at a chart like this. Although MACD, I don't love, I don't hate. Sometimes it helps out, sometimes it doesn't really help out. But seeing it kind of diminish on the histogram here while still having that hidden bearish divergence present as well does present a little bit more bearish case for this perspective. But now we're actually seeing the 20 simple starting to take a positive slope on the 200 band. So is it bearish? Is it not bearish? It's like trying to fucking squeeze water out of a rock. I don't I don't really have much to make out of that. Daily Trollinger Band still operating and potentially rejecting from the median Trollinger Band, but again, offers of the same sort of interpretations we were looking at on spot price or the other charts that I had open. If we take out yesterday's low, this looks like our next lower high in comparison to the 94.50 high right here. So then start to manage off of 92.50 instead of 94.50 on a daily, if that's what you're trading. Of course, it's not financial advice, and I'm not a financial advisor, but this is all coming along the side of MACD doing all sorts of weird things right here. It's not really, hasn't really decided. Looks like we did get technically a cross up yesterday, but not a breakage of structure here, so it doesn't really mean anything to me. So yeah, 12 hour could be okay though. 12 hours presenting another potential move to the upside. Of the 12-hour range, which would be up to 9,300. Other than that, I don't really have too much to make off of this. So let's go back to Bitcoin's chart right here. Let's go back down to the lower term timeframes, and let's start to mark off some major areas. So if I wanted to be like super low term timeframe range, I'd use 92.50, the 200 simple and shorted exponential moving average on this timeframe right here for the 4 hour. For a short term range to the upside, if that area gets taken out on a closure by either a 2 hour or a 4 hour, I'd very likely look for extension at the very least in 9,300. That's unhelpful. I would not be trading that, to be very clear. But 9,400 very likely. That's where the next sort of daily and 3-day trigger can be had, which would spurn off a move towards about 9,900 is where I'd be looking towards. And then this whole formation would look a lot more healthy and a lot better overall. And you can see right here, technically we do have rising bottoms coming in from 89, 89.50, 9,050. So, is it feasible? Yes, it is. That's why I don't really want to, I don't think it's appropriate for me to just say like it's doing this no matter what. It's just it's not real. It's not real trading. But I'd still be using 94.50 as it is as my trigger for that medium move into the top side of the range of the long-term range, if that makes sense. So until we confirm this one as another lower high, which is not in the, it hasn't happened just yet. By the same token, to the downside, I'd still use about 89.50. So let's go look at the probabilities and see if they've shifted around. And you know what they actually have? They actually have quite a bit. Yesterday we saw that the below target probability still has more of a probability to close the next daily below 9,000 versus above 94.50, technically speaking. But you're seeing the gap naturally narrow between these two. Over the weekend and late last week, you saw that the downside probability was really starting to get favored quite a bit more. But Bitcoin failing to make a move does naturally start to lessen the severity of that and turn back up to the upside in time. So the more that Bitcoin goes sideways here, the more and more naturally that it very likely will switch back into a bullish setup. But for right now, technically speaking, bears probably have like another day or two before that happens. So they're on the clock right now. Looking at the 12-hour, we see about the same thing: 73% to the upside versus 23.5% to the downside. But I should also note that the rings are once again starting to get a positive slope. Let's make sure that this is consistent with future. Yeah, they are consistent. And same thing on the daily as well. It's flattened out for a while now, slightly tilted to the upside. So it's in play, yes, but it still would probably take another few days. So I imagine that we're probably gonna get resolution on this probably sometime around we see the stock market move for the next big one on all the major Boruses, which probably happens sometime between Tuesday and Thursday, if I had to guess. I think that today is going to be more or less another rangy day for Bitcoin, which you've been living through this range of piss and shit for the last 3 months. What's another few days, man? What's another few days? And what's another few months on top of that? Maybe everyone just agrees on Bitcoin's price being 91.87 and 50 cents on Bitstamp, which, it sounds good to me. We have an asset here that's pretty much used for nothing, and you can actually sell it to someone else for $9,187.30. Well, it is used for other things like buying other cryptocurrencies. So you got that. There is that. But yeah, I think that's a good place for me to start to wrap up this video. Again, same ranges as we've been looking at for a while now for both the short and medium term timeframes. Well, short term timeframes even shorter than that, 92.50 and versus 90.50 to the downside. But if I had to call it right here, probably another swipe to the downside once again. And do we have enough momentum built up to break that to the downside? Actually, we didn't even look at the 12-hour momentum here. 12-hour momentum is going to be getting out of the bearish control zone and will confirm outside of the bearish control zone with any sort of a closure above 91.30. So okay, that's interesting. That would be kind of this little pivot that we saw right here on the very low term time frames. So if we do come back down below there, we could equally suggest that there would be another move to the downside of this range from the 12-hour perspective, which would be mid 89s. Yeah, about mid 89.50. Yeah. Alrighty. I think that's a good place to leave this one off. Still looking at 94.50 the upside, still looking at 89.50 the downside, or 9,000, depending upon how aggressive you want to be. Depending upon how this day goes, we could maybe move the upside resolution down to 92.50, but that's still just going to take time before we can actually make that distinction. So for right now, I'd like to wish you all once again, take care, and until next time.